Sounder by William H. Armstrong. Chapter 5. The boy moved quickly around the corner and out of sight of the iron door and the gray cement walls of the jail. At the wall in front of the courthouse he stood for a while and looked back. When he had come he was afraid, but he felt good in one way because he would see his father. He was bringing him a cake for Christmas, and he wasn't going to let his father know he was grieved, so his father wouldn't be grieved. Now the sun had lost its strength. There were only a few people loafing around the courthouse walls, so the boy sat for a spell. He felt numb and tired. What would he say to his mother? He would tell her that the jailer was mean to visitors, but didn't say nothing to the people in jail. He wouldn't tell her about the cake. When he told her his father had said she wouldn't send him again, that he would send word by the visiting preacher, she would say, "You grieved him, child. I told you to perk up so you wouldn't grieve him." Nobody came near where the boy sat or passed on the street in front of the wall. He had forgotten the most important thing, he thought. He hadn't asked his father where Sounder had come to him on the road when he wasn't more'n a pup. That didn't make any difference. But along the road on the way to the jail, before the bull-necked man had ruined everything, the boy had thought his father would begin to think and say, if a stray ever followed you and it wasn't near a house, likely somebody's dropped it, so you could fetch it home and keep it for a dog. Wouldn't do no good now, the boy murmured to himself. Even if he found a stray on the way home, his mother would say, "I'm afraid, child. Don't bring it in the cabin. If it's still here when morning comes, you take it down the road and scold it and run it so it won't foller you no more. If somebody come looking, you'd be in awful trouble." A great part of the way home the boy walked in darkness. In the big houses he saw beautiful lights and candles in the windows. Several times dogs rushed in the front gates and barked as he passed, but no stray pup came to him along the lonely, empty stretches of road. In the dark he thought of the bull-necked man crumpled on the floor in the cake crumbs, like the strangled bull in the cattle chute, and he walked faster. At one big house, the mailbox by the road had a lighted lantern hanging on it. The boy walked on the far side of the road so he wouldn't show up in light. "People hangs 'em out when company is comin' at night," the boy's father had once told him. When court was over, they would take his father to a road camp or a quarry or a state farm. Would his father send word with the visiting preacher where he had gone? Would they take his father away to the chain gang for a year or 2 years before he could tell the visiting preacher? How would the boy find him then? If he lived closer to the town, he could watch each day, and when they took his father away in the wagons where the convicts were penned up in huge wooden gates, he could follow. The younger children were already in bed when the boy got home. He was glad, for they would have asked a lot of questions that might make his mother feel bad. Questions like, is everybody chained up in jail? How long do people stay in jail at one time? The boy's mother did not ask hurtful questions. She asked if the boy got in all right and if it was warm in the jail. The boy told her that the jailer was mean to visitors, but that he didn't say nothing to the people in the jail. He told her he heard some people singing in the jail. "Sounder ain't come home?" the boy said to his mother after she had talked about the jail. He had looked under the porch and called before he came into the cabin. Now he went out, calling and looking around the whole cabin. He started to light the lantern to look more, but his mother said, "Hang it back up, child. Ain't no use to fret yourself. Eat your supper. You must be famished." "He said not to come no more," the boy finally said to his mother when he had finished his supper. "He said he'll send word by the visiting preacher." He poked up the fire and waited for his mother to ask him if he had been perk and didn't grieve his father, but she didn't. He warmed himself and watched a patch of red glow the size of his hand at the bottom of the stove. He could see the red-faced man lying on the jail floor with blood oozing out of the corners of his mouth. After a long quiet spell, the rocker began to squeak, and it made the boy jump. But his mother didn't notice. She began to rock as she picked out the walnut kernels. She hummed for a while, and then she began to sing like she was almost whispering for no one to hear but herself. "You've got to walk that lonesome valley. You've got to walk it by yourself. Ain't nobody else gonna walk it for you. In bed, the pressure of the bed slats through the thick straw tick felt good against the boy's body. His pillow smelled fresh, and it was smooth and soft. He was tired, but he lay awake for a long time. He thought of the store windows full of so many things. He thought of the beautiful candles and windows. He dreamed his father's hands were chained against the prison bars, and he was still standing there with his head down. He dreamed that a wonderful man had come up to him as he was trying to read the store signs aloud and had said, "Child, you want to learn, don't you?" In the morning, the boy lay listening to his mother as she opened and closed the stove door. He heard the damper squeak in the stovepipe as she adjusted it. She was singing softly to herself. Then the boy thought he heard another familiar sound, a faint whine on the cabin porch. He listened. No, it couldn't be. Sounder always scratched before he whined, and the scratching was always louder than the whine. Besides, it was now almost 2 months later, and the boy's mother had said he might be back in a week. No, he was not dreaming. He heard it again. He had been sleeping in his shirt to keep warm, so he only had to pull on his overalls as he went. His mother had stopped singing and was listening. There on the cabin porch, on 3 legs, stood the living skeleton of what had been a mighty coonhound. The tail began to wag, and the hide made little ripples back and forth over his ribs. One side of the head and shoulders was reddish-brown and hairless. The acid of the oak leaves had tanned the surface of the wound the color of leather. On the front porch, one front foot dangled above the floor. The stump of an ear stuck out on one side, and there was one eye on that side, only a dark socket with a splinter of bone showing above it. The dog raised his good ear and whined. His one eye looked up at the lantern at the possum sack where they hung against the wall. The eye looked past the boy and his mother where was his master? Poor creature, said the mother, and turned away to get him food. The boy felt sick and wanted to cry, but he touched Sounder on the good side of his head. The tail wagged faster, and he licked the boy's hand. The shattered shoulder never grew together enough to carry weight, so the great hunter with the single eye, his head held to one side so he could see, never hopped much further from the cabin than the spot in the road where he had tried to jump on the wagon with his master. Whether he lay in the sun on the cabin porch or by the side of the road, the one eye was always turned in the direction his master had gone. The boy got used to the way the great dog looked. The stub of ear didn't bother him, and the one eye that looked up at him was warm and questioning. But why couldn't he bark? He wasn't hit in the neck, the boy would say to his mother. He eats all right, his throat ain't scarred. But day after day, when the boy snapped his fingers and said, "Sounder, good Sounder," no excited bark burst from the great throat. When something moved at night, the whine was louder, but it was still just a whine. Before Sounder was shot, the boy's mother always said, Get the pan, child, or feed your dog, child." Now she sometimes got the pan herself and took food out to Sounder. The boy noticed that sometimes his mother would stop singing when she put the food pan down at the edge of the porch. Sometimes she would stand and look at the hunting lantern and possum sack where they hung unused against the cabin wall. The town and the jail seemed to become more remote and the distance greater as each day passed. If his father hadn't said, "Don't come again," it wouldn't seem so far, the boy thought. Uncertainty made the days of waiting longer, too. The boy waited for the visiting preacher to come and bring word of his father. He thought the people for whom his mother washed the soft curtains could certainly write and would write a letter for his mother, but would someone in the jail read it to his father? Perhaps none of the people in jail could read, and the big man with the big red face would just tear it up and swear. The visiting preacher might write a letter for the boy's father, but how would it get to the cabin since no mailman passed, and there was no mailbox like the boy had seen on the wider road near the town? The boy wanted to go to town to find out what happened to his father. His mother always said, "Wait, child, wait." When his mother returned laundry to the big houses, she asked the people to read her the court news from their newspapers. One night she came home with word of the boy's father. It had been read to her from the court news. When the younger children had gone to bed, she said to the boy, "Court's over, and then there was one of those big quiet spells that always made the boy feel numb and weak. You don't have to fret for a while about seeing him in jail. He's gone to hard labor." "For how long?" the boy asked. "It won't be as long as it might. Folks has always said he could do 2 men's work in a day. He'll get time off for hard work and good behavior. The court news had about good behavior in it. The judge said it." "Where's he going to be at?" the boy asked after he had swallowed the great lump that filled up his throat and choked him. "Didn't say. The people that has the paper says it don't ever say where they're gonna be at, but it's the county or the state. Ain't never outside the state, the people say. He'll send word."